actual rules of this.
You're on.
Are we, so, okay, so I'm going to gavel us in. I call the meeting to order. Thank you for being here. Thank you. And thank you, Ginny. And thank you, Ginny, for the incredible note-taking and all of the...
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
You do need to notify the public that this is being recorded,
Yep, thank you.
and that if anybody else is recording, they need to let you know.
Thank you. We are being recorded, and if anyone else is recording, you need to let us know. Good. So could somebody review, if they're familiar with it? So we have two people on the phone. If we take a vote, it has to be a roll call vote, correct?
Yes,
But we are allowed to take votes.
yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
and-
Because you have a quorum present physically,
Okay.
you're good.
So we have the entire committee then participating. Everybody has been sent the agenda and the minutes for prior meetings, which were posted on the website as well.
Yeah.
So I'm going to assume that the public has had a chance to look at that. So the meeting has been called to order. We don't need to do a roll call because we all know who's here. And I will open the floor now for public comment, if there is any.
You should just say who's actually on the phone.
Okay, we have Paul Doan on the phone and Greg Winston on the phone. Also, the two members of the committee that are not here in person are here on the phone. So that having been said, we will open the floor for public comment. Sure, thank you. If you could just state your name and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Peter Antonellis. I live on Parallel Street. So I've read the minutes. I don't have any objection to what's in the minutes. It does cover what happened in the meeting last time. As you said earlier, Ginny did a fabulous job of covering what was said, what was presented. I just want to reiterate, however, my interpretation of the minutes is it was what was said. There's been no determination as to whether one viewpoint or another viewpoint has more credence than any other. Okay. Before the meeting started tonight, there was commentary about what is the charge, and I left it over there on my seat, but it's rather, it's voluminous, the charge, and I'm not so sure upon reflection whether or not it's something that is attainable. It asks for the group to really produce an awful lot, and I'm a little concerned about that. Tonight, however, I wanted to just be heard with this one point. There are several things happening in town already, and I'm not sure whether there's any coordination between this group and the groups that are undertaking the other tasks. There's been a grant, I think, awarded to extend sidewalks from the elementary school on up to the community center, or something like that. That would have a bearing on what happens in Harwich Center, number one. I also see that the folks who are interested in developing the property at 711 Main Street, where the little gas station was or is, they've reintroduced another proposal, and they're going to be going before the Historic District Commission, I think on March 20th, if I'm right. I don't think we've seen anyone from the Historic District Commission at any of these meetings. I did miss one of them, so it's possible someone did come from that group. So I'm wondering about what the coordination is between them and this group, especially since some of the language in the charge specifically addresses the visual impact of the center. That's a lot of what the Historic District Commission does. And there's also one other event happening in town that's relevant to what this group is trying to do, and that's the zoning amendment pertaining to accessory apartments. I happened to be looking at that zoning amendment the other day from the vantage point of a property owner in the center, and I said to myself, gee whiz, this requires a special permit for me, and I'm wondering in a small little area like this whether or not, well, I'm curious as to how the decision was made on the zoning amendment, or the proposal for the zoning amendment, to categorize some areas as requiring special permit or others having the possibility of putting up accessory apartments by right. But I don't want to get distracted. My point was that there's three events: the sidewalks, the zoning amendment, and the development with the gas station. All have a bearing on, or have a relationship to what we're doing here. And I'm not so sure there's a lot of coordination. I would think or hope that there was communication between this group and those others.
Well, and if I might add, there's two other really important factors at play. One is that the Chamber, in concert with people in the town, are working on a cultural district designation, which also is going to be part of the dialogue around Harwich Center And then the other is that the Cape Cod Commission is going to be doing a traffic study specifically of this area in the spring. What's that?
The update of the local comprehensive plan.
And the LCP, that's right. So the third thing is the update of the LCP. So in addition, thank you for bringing up those. In addition, we have a local comprehensive plan update. We have a cultural designation potentially, and we have a traffic study done by other entities. So if the charge was voluminous before, it is even more relative to coordinating all of those efforts.
That's right.
Ginny, could you read the?
So I will. I just wanted to say that is a subject on the agenda to go over all of those.
Yep.
So, and you're going to allow public comment at that time too?
Sure. I mean, we're gonna be a little bit informal just because we have not a huge audience. So you do not feel like you've just blown your ability to speak later.
So the charge is the town of Harwich wishes to create a plan that will stimulate the economic vitality of Harwich Center and improve the area visually and functionally that results in a walkable, sustainable, vibrant, and cohesive village. Housing possibilities ranging from workforce to market-rate housing will also be explored to help increase the variety of housing available in Harwich. And
Thank
that
you.
was the charge from the selectmen.
So that is our, just to remind and repeat, that is our charge.
And also just, Finance Committee is meeting in the same room at 6:30.
This room? Yeah, I don't think that'll be a problem. Do we have any other public comment? Okay, hearing none, I would then move on to the approval of the minutes of December 10th. They were distributed with the packet. Does anybody have any comments or would like to make a motion relative to the December 10th minutes?
I'd like to say that I thought Ginny did an outstanding job with them and distributing them. Absolutely fabulous. Yeoman's work, Ginny.
Thank you.
And I move that we accept those minutes.
Okay, it has been moved. Do we have any second?
Agree.
Okay, that's a second. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Roll call.
Oh, we got to do a roll call. Lane?
Just say yes.
Yes. Dan, may I ask
I
a
can't say
question?
much.
Sure.
First of all, evidently there will not be any more public comments, but I can't hear, and I'm not sure if Paul can hear, the microphone on the floor, so I didn't hear much of what Mr. Antonellis had to say. My second question is, am I correct or incorrect that Paul and I actually cannot vote because we're not in the room?
Do you want me to?
Yeah.
Public comment will be allowed to be continued, and yes, you can vote.
Yeah, I'm going, when I roll call, I will be roll calling you to accept the minutes. So I don't know if you heard, but I did open for discussion on the minutes, and there was none. So it has been moved by Link, seconded by Lane, and we are taking the roll call. So Lane is a yay. Link,
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Paul?
Yay.
And Greg?
Yay.
Yeah, we have to do everything by roll call because you guys are on the phone, so I don't want to be overly burdensome with the administrative side, but that's how this all works.
Mr. Chairman, how
Yes.
are you voting?
Oh, I am and the chair votes in favor also. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good thing you're here, Charlie. So this is more formal than the State House, I have to tell you, which I kind of like. That's not a bad thing. Now I'd like to move on to the approval of the minutes of January 17th. Are there any comments, questions that anybody would have about those minutes prior to? Okay, that hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Move we accept those minutes of January
Been
17th.
moved,
Yes.
moved and seconded, and having been moved and seconded, are there any further discussion? Hearing none, a roll call vote.
I agree.
Yay.
Lane is
Yay.
yay, yay. Chair is yay. Ginny?
Yes.
Yay. On the phone, Paul?
Yay.
Greg?
Yay.
Yay, okay. We have,
And one thing, they may have trouble hearing because unlike the other room
Yep.
where there's actually amplification, these are only for the
audio.
audio. So there is no amplification in this room like there is in the large meeting room.
So what we ought to do is if there's more public comment at the microphone, we
Yeah,
can
we
try
may
to.
want to have them come up here.
All right.
I got
Yeah.
you.
Next on the agenda, we do have a correspondence that we received on January 29th from an Anna Murphy, which was in response to the public hearing. And she did not want to testify publicly, but she did submit a written testimony I can simply take that and put it into the minutes, right?
Yes.
We do not have to read it.
No.
It is available for anybody who would like to read it, but at this point, I'm going to give it to the clerk, secretary, Scribner, to put it into the minutes.
And I have read it.
Okay, fantastic. Is there any discussion about the correspondence, any feedback? Okay, thanks. New business. Would like first entertain a discussion of the input received at the public listening session of January 17th. I will say at the outset, I thought it was really impressive, the turnout there and the participation from the public. Clearly, there's a lot of interest in what happens in and around Harwich Center, and I think that's a great thing. So that having been said, is there any further?
Well, I'm sorry that I couldn't have made it, but
Yeah.
I will say, being in the center, a lot of people have come to me to talk about it, and I agree with you that it's nice to see so much excitement about the center, and people that maybe I wouldn't have expected coming in to ask. The basic feedback, and again, I have to, admit I wasn't there at the meeting, I wasn't able to make it, but similar to the letter that was written, there was a lot of concern about parking. Well, you can park if there's nowhere to go. Why are we making more parking? And so that was one thing that a number of people have come to me about. And the other thing, which I've said too in the past, is if we take away the parking in front of the stores, we sort of look more like a ghost town. And those do slow people down coming in the center because there are obstacles that people have to, go through. I know we're going to have someone come in and professionally said you had a date of when they were going to come in and kind of talk about that. But those are things, living in and working in the center, not to have people come in and have it look like a ghost town with no cars.
Yep.
And if you have lots of parking and no place to go, what good's all the parking?
I'm curious, as a business owner who
Uh-huh.
operates a business there, what's your feeling on that relative to your business?
Well, first of all, if you put parking behind my store, it would be extremely detrimental because my clients are older and they can't walk up that hill.
Dan, may I interrupt for just a second?
Yes,
Sure.
Is Lane speaking?
I'm trying to.
She
Greg.
isn't. She's got a mic right.
I-
Slide that a little
Okay.
closer. There's a lot of ambient
I
noise.
can't hear a thing she's saying. That's
I'm
it's just
sorry,
that.
Greg, and I can't really speak up tonight.
That's okay. I just wanted. Okay.
Is that
thank
any
you, I'm
better?
sorry.
Is
That's
that
better,
better?
yeah. Thank
Okay. So just as a business owner, it would be very detrimental. One, from the standpoint of if there are no cars in front of the stores or on the streets, or, that at least gives you a feeling that we're alive.
Yeah.
And if there's nothing there, it really makes us look like it's a dead zone. Second of all, my clients, a lot of them are older. They can't make it up the hill and around the corner. They don't even want to park in the church parking lot. They want that front and center seat. They're arguing with Ruggies to which who gets
Yeah.
in. So, and I watch people going in and out of Ruggies. Does it get complicated having some of the older people going in and out of Ruggies, going in and out of our store? Absolutely.
Okay.
And if we look historic, how historic does asphalt look?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't look very historic. There's actually nothing historically looking about it. So I'm totally against the parking behind all the stores.
Okay, that's interesting. Link, do you have any comments? You're sort of an expert.
I wouldn't go across that bridge there, Mr. Lynn.
Go ahead, I have a house and a store.
As the chair of the committee, I designate you as an expert. Okay.
Okay.
Tonight you are.
I think at our first meeting, where Senator Doan had charged me with go find some grants and so forth. I know that the grants, if we take any funds, state, federal funds, those come with strings, and those strings are saying the footprint in which you have to build. And I can definitively tell you that if we were to accept other people's money, the choice of whether we have parking out there would probably go away. The town can do what it wants. As long as the town pays for what it's going to develop out there, you can build. It obviously has to be engineered and meet MUTCD standards, But beyond that, they can build whatever they feel fit to build.
So what you're saying is if we took money from state or fed, we would have to take it to a state or fed standard
They
in
have,
order to...
they have the complete street standards that requires bike lanes and sidewalks on both sides of the street, and it's a minimum of a 43-foot layout, which...
That would take care of your problem.
Which wouldn't work. And I don't disagree, it's a nice little place, and the parking does slow people down, absolutely, going through there.
My customers don't come by a bike.
And what
I'm just saying.
the Cape
They
Cod
come by a
Commission
truck.
was asked to look at basically all of Harwich Center and the intersections specifically, basically from Oak Street, all those intersections that are all around here in Parallel Street, and look at the interactions of them. We had one done right out here. It's just in Maine, I don't know, back in 2008, 2009, as I recall. And it really didn't get anywhere because to do what needs to be done, it's going to require private property taking. And people generally walk away. So there's no easy answers to what's going on here. I will say there is the sidewalk, the gentleman talked. We do have 2 grant applications in. There's a second one that the Safe Routes to School applied for that I assisted them with, which would include Parallel Street and up to the end of Sisson. I don't believe that included Main Street, but they were talking about possibly doing a side on one
To the
side of the
elementary
road.
school?
Yeah, to make a loop and then be able to get pedestrians to the library
Okay.
safely.
And then the second grant is actually this corridor.
Yeah, but that
For
wasn't the whole,
ADA
that was the ADA grant.
Yeah.
That's not gonna come with construction funds.
Oh, I know.
Chris, the town administrator charged me with putting together an estimate, and the construction estimate's about $500,000 to rehab a little over a mile of sidewalks to the cultural center and the community center, including both sides of here. Engineering would probably cost another 100 on top of that. So you're in the $600,000 range just to do a couple of sidewalks.
A significant amount of the input we got from the public had to do with the movement of either vehicles, pedestrians, or bicycles, right? I mean, I don't know what percentage of the comment was on that. I'm sort of going through the list of the notes here, and a lot of it really is in that. And I guess I would ask the planner, do you think that there are town entities that are looking at the movement of vehicles, bicycles, and pedestrians?
Well, I know the bike committee is looking at certainly the movement of bicycles. The disabilities committee, and I know that's not the proper name for them, but, you know, they're looking at the pedestrian movement and safe pedestrian movement. And, you know, we're doing the traffic count study that the commission is doing. As part of the local comprehensive plan, we'll be looking at all of that.
Okay.
And included in the local comprehensive plan this time around is actually a capital plan to look at all the needs of the community, from things like bike trails and septic and sewer and water. You know, we're ahead of the game with several of those things, but we're gonna be looking comprehensively at all of that
Okay,
and how it's all gonna work together.
thank you. Sir, yes.
Cape Cod Commission involved with the traffic at all?
The Cape
Yeah.
Cod Commission involved in traffic, yes.
Would they be doing that as part of the study?
No, different study. The local comprehensive
Yeah.
plan, the town will be looking at town-wide traffic and transportation, whereas this is only looking at this corridor.
What's the time frame of the LCP?
If we get funding, at Maytown meeting, we would be putting out an RFP ASAP.
Okay.
We are waiting for the guidelines from the Cape Cod Commission on the preparation of the local comprehensive plans. So, you know, if we can get it started by late summer, I think that would be.
But certainly nothing would prohibit you from using the Cape Cod Commission
Oh, no,
study?
we're gonna use, I mean,
Okay.
we already have an approved housing production plan and needs assessment. That's gonna be part of the plan. We already
Okay.
have an open space and recreation plan, that's gonna be part of the plan. And some of that also has the transportation and bikeway and things like that incorporated in it. We have the wastewater comprehensive plan, that's gonna be part of the plan. And we know that the water department has done a plan looking out to see what they need for water. So,
Did you have a follow-up, sir?
Yeah,
Thanks.
One other follow-up is, this little Brett Road kind of goes on me as kind of an integral part of the whole thing. It's a private road, and I'm wondering if there could be a procedure, or should there, you, as your committee, be part of the procedure for the town to take that road over? Because there is parking, and it can be regulated in there properly. Right now, it's a mishmash.
Yep.
And
You may-
I'm wondering what that procedure could be for you folks, and whether you would be willing to take it up.
just to repeat what the gentleman said so the public can hear it, he's asking about Brett Road, which connects between Parallel and Main Street, and, you know, whether the town should be taking that and create some parking along there. As I understand it, one of the goals of this group is to make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen by the end of this calendar year. If that's something that this committee thinks is a movement to go forward with, that would be one of your recommendations at that time with whatever report goes to them. You know, assuming we get to that point, or whether, you know, whatever direction.
And I think that we heard at the public hearing, I think there were 2 of the 4 there. And my sense from that group, the other 2 weren't there, is that a taking would be a friendly taking. So my suggestion would be that we sit down with the 4 owners and really try to coordinate what is their desire. If I were one of the 4, just based on what I know now, and that might change if I had more information, I would willingly work with the town so that the improvements were made and it was more of a, so that is something that's a great point, and it's something that I think we will look at in the future. Tom?
I was just thinking that as I listen to this conversation, it sounds to me as though there are other parties already significantly out of the gates ahead of us, studying many of the same issues that it sounds to me that Selectmen's charge is trying to address. And I'm wondering if as a committee, you aren't a year or 2 ahead of the need. That the LCP
That's
planning.
just cut off, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, because you're not near a microphone. If I can kind of
Yeah.
summarize what the gentleman just said, Tom Evans just said, is there are a number of other entities that are moving forward on this, and is this committee actually maybe too soon out of the gate and should wait until some of this other work is completed?
And if I could elaborate, and you can serve as my interpreter if you'd be willing.
Great in all of
To
this.
say that some of these projects are specific enough that they require specific talent, engineering skills,
Yes.
access to town records, access to town resources. And it sounds to me as though perhaps this committee's work follows their work a year or 2 down the road.
I think
So-
Mr. Evans just said we aren't talented.
No, that's not what I heard at all.
I think you found your new chair.
No, I mean, what I heard from that is
Yes.
that some of these studies are gonna be very specialized and are gonna require very specific talents that I know even I don't have as the town planner, Link doesn't have as the DPW director. There's gonna be some things where we are going to need some, you know, consulting folks to help guide us through this.
Jenny?
Since I'm trying to take the minutes for this, I think a lot of our discussion, we're jumping ahead to what's the next
Yes,
part. We're
you
just,
are.
should be giving feedback on,
Okay, so
What
is there
happened
any
then?
other
I'm concerned
feedback
about the
on the January
room.
17th meeting before we move on to the agenda item, which not only are we a year ahead, but you are an agenda item ahead, Tom. So if there is no further public comment, we will move on to the review of current initiatives. And I'd like to start, you know, just by reiterating what we already went through, okay? So we have a local comprehensive plan, which is a town-wide initiative that's going to be going on through a formal process. That's a very, very specific it's a very steered and articulated process, which is really
Exactly,
good.
and it will be made up of representatives from a variety of entities in town. You know, there'll be planning, but the planning board's kind of spearheading this, but this is a comprehensive plan that there are gonna be members of, you know, the planning board, the conservation commission, the historic commission. You know, we want, you know, certainly somebody from DPW or a representative. You know, we're gonna have this is gonna be a large group.
So
that's gonna
Charlene,
be
having
hearing
looked at a
this.
lot of LCPs, just because I have nothing else to do in life, is it conceivable that the local comprehensive plan
Yes.
could have a section in it specifically about town center here?
Not just this town center, we're gonna be looking at Harwich Port.
Yeah.
We're gonna be looking at, you know, Pleasant Lake, we're gonna be looking at East Harwich. We're gonna be looking at all these, you know, particularly from an economic development standpoint. And, you know, Cindy Williams is here today, and as the director of the chamber, you know, I feel very blessed that we have such a great working relationship with them. Not every town works well with their chamber, but we do, and that's gonna move forward and continue. But we're gonna be looking at all these different villages from economic development standpoints and what is gonna be, you know, best served for those areas, but also looking at the historic elements of that, you know, particularly here in Harwich Center. I know there's a movement in West Harwich along Route 28 that, you know, there's a movement to really look at that in a historic aspect. They're looking at the Captain's Row. So all of this is gonna meld into that. And there'll be sub-plans within that larger plan.
Okay, great. So we have the LCP, which sounds pretty comprehensive. We have the Cape Cod Commission traffic study. We have sidewalks being looked at by the town, and you know, both through the filter of ADA and also school access and all that stuff. We have the bikeways people looking at bike paths. We have the historic district looking at the historic nature and having to approve any development that goes on here through that historic filter. What have I missed?
Cultural district.
And the cultural district, and the chamber. I keep missing that, and it's the most important thing, Cindy. So that is an update of, and you know, the question then becomes: is this group a synthesizer and a convener and a bringing together of all of those initiatives, or are we another initiative that has to be minded during this whole process that simply becomes a system complicator? And having thrown that question out, I would entertain answers to that. Because that is fundamental. If we can play a role, and Tom is exactly right, I mean, no matter what, we're ahead of it. I mean, we're trying to convene things that don't exist yet. That doesn't work. So, you know, the question is, what exactly is the mission based on what our charge? What exactly are the next steps? So I'm going to take us into that discussion now that we've articulated what's going on. What are the next steps of this committee?
Dan, is this something that you're putting to the board members, or are you putting this to the audience?
No, I'm putting it to the board, but we are informal enough tonight that if anybody in the audience had a burning desire to weigh in on that, they would be that would be entertained by the chair. But go ahead, Paul. Do you want to answer that?
Well, my thought is twofold, I guess. One is, I do think there is a legitimate role, because I think there are a few key elements of the puzzle that aren't being addressed by these other entities. One of those is the economic stimulus or financial investment, or however you want to phrase it. We need individuals who are willing to come in, consider businesses, what do they need, what could we assist, if anything, in that effort, at least in the thought of trying to identify or locate potential investors, potential business people that would be willing to come in. Without that, all our efforts, I think, will fall a little short of the mark, and no other entity, at least in any timeful way, is focused on trying to find that economic stimulus. So my sense is that that's one area that a part of our committee or our whole committee could actively pursue. And the second part of it is that I think there are specific issues that may overlap with what other entities are doing. But I think we're in a position to be more aggressive and more active and not be necessarily tied down by certain political limitations, such as if we were to take that or talk to the investors or talk to the landowners about potentially recommending that the town take that right-of-way between Powell Street and Main Street, it seems as though we could lead that effort. Effectively, what you're going to have to do is obviously get approval of town meeting, and prior to that, you've got to have a planning board hearing, and the planning board has to make a recommendation, and the selectmen have to be instructed to lay out the property, to lay out the roadway, and so there's multiple steps before it even gets to town meeting. But at this point, nobody is doing that, and if we could take the initiative on a project such as that, or maybe even consider something like septic, small individual septic wastewater treatment facilities, those kinds of specific projects I would like to see us consider tackling. And I think we would be more focused and more able to move more promptly to direct or to lead some of this effort. So my thought is, at least in those two areas, there are individual steps, and there's specifically the economic piece that no one is tackling. I think in both areas we would have a legitimate role.
Thanks.
I would like to add to that.
Yep.
I completely concur with Paul. I absolutely, completely concur with Paul. I believe that working through the municipal system will take time, but I think that the goal of our organization is to lay out this plan and present it to the town as a very logical way to revitalize the center. And I think that the economic development is more important than anything. I would like to ask Lynn Cooper one thing. In relation to parking, is there more available parking on the street that has not been laid out?
Possibly.
I don't know, but I know in my history, because I'm so old, that I remember when cars were parked on both sides of Main Street all the way to the library. Now I see only painted parking spaces, in front of buggies and lanes and stuff like that. But I mean, it used to go all the way down. When the post office 02645 was there, we had parking on both sides of the street.
I had been told that, this is Jenny, I'd been told that by probably the prior police chief that there is parking there, it's just not marked. I've been told that it's not no parking in front of the library, which I can't even imagine. I don't want to encourage that, but that's what I've heard. That they couldn't ticket anyone if they did park there.
Well, what's laid out certainly does not meet current standards. And you're in this industry, you are allowed to keep refreshing what is laid out. I couldn't go lay out something new and not have it meet standards, as in a uniform 11-foot travel lanes, and then what do you need there? I actually don't know what the parking space needs to be, but it has, anything it needs to do needs to be laid out appropriately.
It's at least 20 or 22 feet.
Well, that's length. I was thinking
Yeah.
width.
Width would be at
is-
least 10 feet.
Is it 10 feet? I was going to say that.
Yes, sir.
Could you as a committee kind of define yourself as taking the things to set the table for the economic improvement that might come about? In other words, you've got your parking going, maybe, sidewalks here, sidewalks there, maybe a zoning change here or there, so that if somebody is interested, you've got a portfolio to present to them that this is what we're working with. Set the table for the economic improvement. Sidewalks, zoning changes,
Charlie, did you want-
street layout.
what the gentleman is saying is, you know, can this committee serve as kind of the setting the table, of the area? You know, have a portfolio of what's available. Until, you know, as the town planner, until we know what it is that people want to do, you can't really do a zoning change. I mean, there needs to be a zoning change for a reason. So I'm not sure what zoning changes would be appropriate at this time until we know a little bit more. This area is covered under a zoning overlay district, which is quite generous. It lets you do a number of different things and get waivers from the planning board as part of that process. So there is the opportunity to think outside the box and be creative. I'm actually meeting with a property owner next week who is, you know, wants to sit down and figure out what they can do with their property. So I'm going to do that with them, you know, and try and, you know, guide them through what they may want to do. I can't say, why don't you do this? That's not my role as the planner, but I can give ideas of what can be done and how it can be done.
So
I'd like to say thank you, Charlene, for that. That's important information. The planning.
Is he still trying?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I just wanted to respond there were some questions earlier about the historic district and have they been involved? They've been invited to the meetings. They haven't, there was some question, I think, in their minds whether they should have an official, like, liaison or whatever, since they would be looking at anything that comes before them. But several members have attended the other meetings that we've had. So I saw their last meeting from last week. I just saw it last night on Channel 18, and they formed a subcommittee to start looking at, let's say, like the non-building type of things in the historic district, streetscape, traffic calming, you know, pedestrian safety, gateways into the village center, signage, and so that's all like is related to what we do, and it was I thought a real positive step. Like they sometimes when the historic district gets combined with the historic commission, it ends up focusing so much on the regulatory part because of all of the business that comes before them, and so this would be a little more. I think it's something that's their area of expertise. And I'd like to see that continue, but whether our committee continues or not, we could still have input with that. I do agree with Greg and Paul that I think this initiative has been good because the center really wasn't getting a lot of attention, and you can see from everyone that came out that there is a lot of interest. So I'm not sure how active we need to be until some of these things have moved forward further. Like one of my main concerns is pedestrian safety and traffic calming, and until the study's done, you know, so anyway, I think that at some point, you know, maybe we need to take a break. I've kind of struggled with the idea of this committee. It doesn't, the charge seems to be pretty big and not so clearly defined. And I've heard different interpretations from different people about what it actually means. And my initial understanding was we were looking at this downtown core kind of Harwich Center, and then I hear even the selectmen talk about it as being broader, and that to me goes into like the local comprehensive plan, a much bigger for the whole village. So, and I also find I've been on several other committees in recent years that, like, I wonder if a lot of what we're trying to do is really a town committee function, the whole economic development piece, or at least you cannot do it at public meetings. Individual approaches to investors are one thing, but I was on a committee that I believe the chamber led it for Open Cape, looking at how the town could benefit from Open Cape. There were business people, there were community stakeholders, and there were some representatives from town government. And that worked really well. And another one was the chamber had the branding effort, and that was business people and stakeholders in the community too. And then you're not restricted to, it's very rigid in, how town government works and posting public meetings, and you might have a really hot topic, but not on the agenda. And so anyway, I kind of question how much we can do of that in this committee.
Thank you, Jenny. Did you have a comment, sir?
Chairman.
Yes.
Craig Chadwick, Harwich Center.
Hi, Craig.
Thank you. Hi. A couple of things, really piggybacking on what has already been said. The scope of this thing is huge and can probably be a lot bigger because it sounds like the charter is so generic. You could almost throw everything in there, and just the different items that were mentioned tonight, the items that are that were captured from the public meeting or the listening session. I think there's 20 or 25 items on there. Would it be helpful to put together a spreadsheet, kind of an Excel spreadsheet kind of thing, with all of the initiatives that are going on? I mean, everybody seems to have kind of their little niche, and they're aware of this is happening and they're aware of that's, maybe Charlene has it all because she's here in town hall, but to list it out and what group or who is responsible for it, and then maybe we wouldn't try to duplicate effort or recreate the wheel. And then also from that, I might see, you've got 9 months left before you have to put a report back to the selectmen. We're talking about investors in economic development. And that's all great, but I would find it hard to believe we're gonna find somebody with a bag of cash come riding in and have things happen within a 9-month period of time. So would it help if we can identify all the items that need to be addressed, and then who is responsible for it, and maybe the coordination of it is through this body. But then also try to chunk it out. What is the objective in that report that goes to the Board of Selectmen 9 months from now? Are we gonna just kind of say, well, we're not really ready to do anything. We talked about a lot of things, but we don't see anything happening for 4 years or 5 years. Or if there are things that can be accomplished within the next 9 months, then, or planned enough so that it's ready to go once the report is submitted, and if it has to go to town meeting in May. And then what are the what is kind of the mid-range? What is maybe 5 years can be accomplished? And then what might be 25 or 30 years? So that we can kind of put our focus on what we can accomplish and do it in little doable chunks and not repeat or recreate with all the other.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Charlene?
You just described the entire local comprehensive planning process.
Okay.
As part of that, there will be a matrix that will say, here are all the tasks, here's all the initiatives, here's who is going to be the responsible parties. So you just gave one of the best summarizations that I've heard on what a local comprehensive plan will entail.
Yeah, so,
That being said,
yeah,
I don't think that it means that there can't be folks out there who are trying to find developers, who are trying to find people who may want to come into Harwich Center or other places in town, for that matter, who can, be movers and shakers out there. I agree, I'm just the staff person, I'm the planner, but, Ginny brings up a really good point that we're really governed by the open meeting law and ethics, and some of what is being envisioned that this committee can do, you really can't do, in my opinion.
well, Charlene, and if I could address that, if the charge from the selectmen had been, we want to put together a group of economic development focused people to find investors to specifically do something, that's different. I'm very uncomfortable as a sworn in town unpaid employee, if you will, having gone through the ethics test, having served in the State House, as a formal member of a town charged committee, meeting with individuals trying to get them to invest in properties. Because the appearance of that, while there's not inherently as anything unethical, the appearance is we are charged by the selectmen here to play a certain role, and then it looks like we are selectively reaching out. So, I mean, I'm even a little bit, I'm a little bit concerned with that. I'm also concerned with my role, because I always saw the chair of a committee like this, the role when I step into the chair position is facilitative. It's, so I have tons of opinion on this stuff. I don't really feel like it's appropriate as chair for me to even say it, because my role as a chair is to appropriately try to take comment from the public, comment from my committee members, and try to get somewhere with it. And so that actually inhibits my ability to participate as, Tom Evans, who goes to a lot of meetings with me, knows I'm not a wallflower when I have opinions about stuff. But I think I'm in an impossible position, because I don't even, I will just personally for a second, I do agree with what Tom said a while ago. I certainly agree with what Ginny said, which is our mandate, and what Craig said, our mandate is so broad, and any one of those mandates, there are already town functions that are part of a democratic town government that is already looking at it. So the process of an LCP has evolved over decades of how do we democratically have a discussion about a comprehensive plan for our community that is inclusive, that has the resources to develop to output that actually is consistent with how a town should function. We, at this point, seem like an ad hoc group with a lot of individuals who have a lot of ideas. We don't really have the authority to act on them. We don't have the resources to actually do the work that we would like to do. And so, as the chair, I'm really in a quandary. And I apologize for that, because
you don't need to apologize for that, Dan. I totally concur with you.
Okay, so
I agree.
Tom.
I agree totally with Paul initially. We needed to bring this together as an initiative for the third time. But we need to work it out this time between the economic development versus what the responsibilities are of the town. And I will tell you something I have learned, and I'm not quite 75, but I'm almost there, Paul. There's a big difference between working with the municipality and working with the government and working in private development. I would rather be on the private development side. I left my position with the town as much as I love my working with the Harwich Historic District Commission for 30 years. Now working with Midgate Church Homes, and that's my other than my own business, that's what I do. Midgate Church Homes is very important, but here's a very important thing that everybody in that room should hear. The town needs to understand how to work together with the community. We are trying, Midgate Church Homes is the largest provider of low-income housing for the seniors and handicapped. And simultaneously, the town has also created a committee that isn't even communicating with my committee to talk about our needs and how we go about this. And as a private business owner, I also feel very uncomfortable because I want to say something that I can't say because it might not be ethical because I'm a private developer.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So I do understand it. I just understand that we as a group, Paul, organize this group, and the idea is for all of us to put our minds together and try to figure out how we can make that village a more economically viable, happier place and slow down the traffic simultaneously.
Well, the town manager, who has a lot more authority in this building than I do, I think is looking at us a little anxiously to say, let's move along. So as far as next steps, I think I would entertain a motion for what this committee should do next.
So, so I'll make a motion and then can discuss. I mean, I'm thinking maybe we
You need a
should.
second on your motion before you can discuss.
Sure. I'm thinking that perhaps we need to, I don't know the right word, take a hiatus for a while and let some of these other things, progress a little bit, and then we could reconvene when you feel it's appropriate, maybe in the fall, and know what has happened with a lot of these initiatives. Where are we? Like, what's viable, what's not, and where would we fit in?
So the motion sounds like a motion to reconvene in the fall when some of these other initiatives, we know the LCP will have some of the results from the commission, traffic. Sir, would you like to make a comment?
You need a second before.
Oh, I'm sorry. So that is the motion, that this committee reconvene in the fall.
I would second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have a discussion?
have a comment.
Yes, sir.
I think we were tasked with coming up with ideas and promoting efforts. To go back under a rock for another 6 or 7 months, we have a 12-month tenure, and to just hand away 4 or 5 or 6 of those months without making any initiative or even trying to develop some ideas or a consensus, I think is misplaced. And I wouldn't worry. You're not the preside over a different body and different views and try to keep. We're tasked with trying to stimulate investment, try to stimulate ideas. And if that's my interpretation only, well, then I stand in error. But my sense is that the selectmen wanted us to be active and involved, and if we go too far, let somebody slap us on the wrist and tell us, no, you went too far. Nobody's going to tell you that. We're civic citizens. We are unpaid. We're trying to do the best we can with the resources that we have. And I'm strongly opposed to the idea of just kind of packing up our tents and going away for 6 months like we need a break. We've been working too hard and we need 6 months off.
No, we don't. We don't need 6 months off.
Okay, any other comments?
So,
Motion's been made and seconded. Lane?
Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Lane?
I seconded your motion.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, he's calling for the
Okay.
vote.
I'm calling for a vote now.
Okay.
Wait a minute. You're calling for a vote for...
To reconvene in the fall.
Okay. I'm not being in the room, but I'm in agreement with Paul. I disagree.
Okay, so we have a roll call. You know, I'm going to point out with a relatively high level of frustration, and I'm not an easy guy to irritate, that we have 4 people who are here in the wintertime at the meeting in Town Hall, all of whom, before we vote, I will read the room. And we have 2 people who are a long way away. I'm just making that as a comment. Lane?
I vote we reconvene in the fall.
Link?
yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
I concur. Greg?
I disagree. I vote nay.
Okay, and Paul? Paul, is that a no vote?
He may have hung up, I don't.
And therein lies the problem. Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
It sounds like you needed a majority vote,
Yep.
so
We just got
It passed.
it passed. So you have a hiatus of X months. Would it make sense for somebody to request an audience before the Board of Selectmen between now and X? Because, I mean, we
So
know.
could I just voice my level of frustration? The problem is we're still a committee. So we actually can't have conversations without violating open meeting law. Okay? The constraints that we have on us. So I can tell you what I intend to do as a private citizen. I'd love to meet with potential investors for down here. I'd love to read what's going on with the local comprehensive plan and some of the traffic studies. I'm engaged in the topic areas here. I'm specifically looking what we as a committee can do right now. That's the problem I have.
Could you, as the chairman, or somebody on the committee, then if you're concerned about an open meeting law, put it forth as a 3-month interim report to the Board of Selectmen and basically say, we've taken a hiatus, we voted to take a hiatus because
Sure.
of all the things that we talked about, and we need
We can,
much
but
more
the problem is
specific
exactly
direction.
what you're
Excuse
saying.
me?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Okay. We need much more specific direction from you, Board of Selectmen, what you're expecting from us 9 months from now, because 9 months will be here before a bat of an eye.
I can report what happened at this meeting to the Board of Selectmen. That is what I intend to do. Okay, is that, Craig, is that, I mean, that's, because part of that will be putting it back to the Board of Selectmen, saying, we have decided, and here's why. I'm gonna articulate it.
Right.
But,
And my guess is, no one has, I don't mean to disparage the board or anybody, but there are so many issues that are raised here just about the committee and what rights or authority does this committee have to do the things that they've been charged to do. Do the Board of Selectmen really understand that? I don't know.
yes, good question. So, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I second that emotion.
We have to roll call
Oh,
it.
you.
Lane?
Lane, I second.
Yay.
Okay, yes.
Yay. Paul? Greg?
Yay.
Thank you.
Can you hit the off button?
My, oh, that's.
Time on your way
You
out.
may want the minutes to reflect that